Are you planning a trip this year to see the Jets play on a road game? Today, we have an expert on NFL stadiums to tell you what to expect when you watch the Jets away from MetLife Stadium. That's ahead today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Wednesday, June 19th, 2024, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. Subscribe to the show for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll get new episodes as soon as they're posted. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the show. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Well, the Jets have 9 road games this season, and you might be planning on going to see one of them. A lot of exciting venues you could go to. The Jets will be playing in London this year against the Minnesota Vikings. They, of course, will all play as they do every year at Buffalo, New England, Miami. There's another trip into Florida in December to Jacksonville. They begin the season in San Francisco, week 2, Tennessee. There's a website I use whenever I go to a new sporting venue, stadiumjourney.com, which has reviews on every stadium you can imagine, not just in pro sports, but college, amateur athletics. It's amazing how many details they have. So today we're going to speak with Dave of stadiumjourney.com, and he'll explain to you the experiences you can expect if you go to see the Jets on the road this year. Let's jump right into my conversation with Dave. Are you planning a road trip to a Jets game this year? Well, I have the perfect guy to help you figure out which stadiums are best around the NFL. Dave Cottenie of stadiumjourney.com is with me. Dave, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, John.
So if you're not familiar with Stadium Journey, it is an encyclopedia of sports stadiums, not just in America, but across the world. I use it every time I go to a stadium. I told Dave before we started recording, I've used it for like college baseball summer leagues that take place at high school fields. I used it last summer when I was in London before I went to an English Premier League game. I mean, they have so much coverage of the pluses and minuses of stadiums across the world. So Dave's going to provide us with a lot of great information. And I think like if you're looking at the Jets schedule this year, and if you're looking at going at a road game, the one that really stands out is week 5. The Jets will be playing the Minnesota Vikings. It will be technically a Jets road game, but in reality, it's a neutral site game because the Jets are in London. And Dave, I know you mentioned to me before we started recording, there are some things the fans will want to know if they want to go to this game. There's some differences between going to a game in America versus getting tickets in London.
Yep. So thanks for the great introduction, and glad you like the site. Glad you use the site. That game that we're talking about at Tottenham. We actually were lucky enough that one of our writers went last year and saw, I believe it was the Ravens and the Titans that played at Tottenham. And a couple things jumped out at me. First off, and our colleague, our Stadium Journey colleague, Richard Smith, wrote the review. If you're looking at the rankings, his Tottenham score is about 4th out of all of the NFL experiences that we have on our site. We have all 32. So it's a great experience. It's like, he described it as like a playoff game, like a bowl game, like a Super Bowl almost, right? Because you have this congregation of people coming who are not necessarily linked to any specific team. You're going to have people like your friends who are going to come from the New York area who are Jets fans. You're going to have Vikings fans come, but you're going to have a lot of English people who are just interested in the NFL, and they're going to show up. And he said you would see jerseys and colors for like across the entire league. So it's not necessarily just going to be like this, Jets experience. I tried to compare it to, when I talked to Richard today, compared it to when the Bills played in Toronto. I think that's what they were going for, the experience, and it really fell flat. The Bills series in Toronto was a colossal failure. But Tottenham has been very successful. He described the stadium as an NFL stadium that was built by an English Premier League in an English Premier City that happens to have an English Premier team playing in it. They have an NFL ready field. He said it comes out. It sits underneath the natural grass pitch. I guess the pitch sort of splits in the middle. And if you want to look this up, apparently there's a video on YouTube where you can see it. It's pretty cool, apparently. So it like splits in the middle, and then the turf field raises up. So it's got that kind of Las Vegas feel to it, where they have two fields going on at the same time. He said the neighborhood at Tottenham isn't the greatest, but you're going to go on a Sunday when there's like 60 to 70 to 80,000 people kicking around there, right? So it's, there are plenty of stadiums that aren't in the best area, but when you bring all of those people, it's totally different than going to that neighborhood on a Wednesday when it's quiet or whatever. One of the big things he said is about buying tickets. And this is pretty a cautionary tale for your listeners who want to go. Richard said to avoid the third party providers, in that secondary market kind of thing. I guess the regulations in England around reselling tickets are pretty strict. And specifically and I was really jealous when I heard this, specifically with regards to jacking up the price. So if you're going to one of the go-tos here in the United States, then, or in Canada, where I am, there'll probably be stuff there, but there's a good chance it's going to be fraudulent. So avoid that. He tried to get tickets right away, which, we kind of discussed as like the Taylor Swift system, where, you have to be in a room at a certain time and you see the countdown, and then you have the opportunity, and you might not get what you want. And you might not get your price range or whatever. And those are kind of like the top end most expensive times. But to go on, what you would want to do is you want to go, if you're going to hit the secondary market, you want to go on the Ticketmaster, like the official Ticketmaster resale. And then he said that for his game, the prices came down and the availability was better. So I know it's a difficult feeling. I know I myself, if I'm planning on going somewhere, I'm like super antsy. And the last thing I want to book is like a flight or a hotel or whatever. I want to do the tickets first, because I don't want to plan all this stuff out and then get shut out of the game. But he said like patience is really what you need to have when you're buying your tickets.
That resonates with me, because I'm actually going to Paris next month for the Olympics, and that's been my experience. It's been very similar to that. And you're right. It is different. I remember last year I was mentioning a different sport. I went to an English Premier League game, but as you've mentioned, like the secondary ticket sites in England, I've heard that you should steer away from them. And I remember when I went to that game, it was like you had to sign up for like some fan club or something like that in order to buy the ticket. So yeah, just a different culture over in England. So thank you for that. That's a lot of really great information for our listeners if they want to hop across the pond to see the Jets play Minnesota. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Gametime. If you want to go to one of these games this year and see the Jets on the road, you're going to need a ticket, and Gametime is the place to get them. Now, we're giving you plenty of advance notice. None of these games are happening for another couple of months, but even if you went to the last minute, Gametime's still a great place to get tickets. In fact, I've used Gametime last minute myself plenty of times. Even an hour or two before my event, I haven't been able to believe the deals I've gotten. I've just gotten great tickets at low prices. Gametime is the place to go. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. It's LOCKEDONNFL. One word with no space for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So stateside, Jets open in San Francisco September 9th. So I've been to San Francisco twice in my life, and I've been to two of their sports venues. I've never been to the 49ers stadium. I've been to the Giants stadium. I think it's Oracle Park, where the San Francisco Giants plays. I thought that was the most beautiful ballpark I've ever been in.
Yeah, one of the best for sure.
And then I went in 2022. I went to see the Golden State Warriors play, and I thought their arena is a palace. I mean, it's amazing. So San Francisco, as far as I'm concerned, has amazing sports venues. How does the 49ers stadium compare to either of those?
If you're looking for the Giants experience, or what I hear is the Golden State Warriors experience, then probably the 49ers is going to be a bit of a letdown. The 49ers experience is carried by the fans, right? Like one of the most ardent, hardcore fan bases, I think, in the NFL. Maybe you guys feel this in New York, where, you guys spent $1 billion on a stadium that's kind of like, meh, it's okay. In San Francisco, it's kind of interesting. Well, first of all, it's not in San Francisco, it's in Santa Clara, right? So if you're looking for that like San Francisco experience, you're definitely going to want to go to one of those two venues, because they're like right in the heart of San Francisco, where all the tourist stuff is, and the wharf and the trolley cars and all that kind of stuff. Santa Clara, you're looking at more of that kind of removed experience. But for a new venue ish, that's a 2019, I believe. Just younger than Vegas, than Los Angeles. Like they spent like maybe $500 million on that place. So it's not going to measure up in the wow factor like that you would see in a Vegas or some of the other sort of just architectural wow places, Atlanta, maybe. I think you're going to have a good time. But it's the fans that are going to carry out. They do. I haven't been. San Francisco kind of ranks on our scale. It kind of ranks. Where does it rank? Kind of ranks at the top of the bottom third. Okay, right in that kind of, these are okay kind of places. They have a museum there, which is pretty interesting. It's a little precarious in that it's very rah 49ers. And if you really know your 49ers stuff, then you might enjoy it. If you don't know who the left tackle was for the, all the Super Bowl wins, then maybe some of it's going to go over your head. But, it's someplace that I wouldn't mind going. But the big thing is, if you're looking to be, San Francisco, you're not going to be San Francisco.
Thank you for that. Very interesting. Week 2, the Jets head to Nashville to play the Tennessee Titans. I believe you told me that this is a stadium you've been to. I've heard great things about Nashville. How about the stadium there?
Oh, you know what? Nashville, amazing. If you are a nostalgia person, then this would be the year to go, because it's on its way out. It's another year, maybe 2. I'm not exactly sure on the timeline, but the shovels are in the ground. They're building a new stadium. I don't think it's necessary per se, but I don't make these decisions, and I don't give tax breaks or anything like that. So the big thing about Nashville is you're in like downtown Nashville, and one of the best places to go, go hang out on Broadway. And when we went to Nashville, not being country music fans, taking in that whole Nashville experience was just wow. The stadium itself, it's all right. It's nothing overly spectacular. There's no real architectural wows to it. Solid environment, good time. But again, it's being replaced.
Is that stadium downtown?
The current one, Nissan. Yeah, it's adjacent. Like you could walk if you're looking for a good hike. It would be considered more of a downtown kind of stadium than, some of the other ones like a Kansas City or whatever that are way out on the, or San Francisco, definitely within the city. So if you're staying, choose your hotel. You could, it's a walking one for sure, if you pick the right hotel.
October 20th, the Jets play in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. That's one I wouldn't go to just because in the years I've been watching the Jets, two of the absolute worst playoff losses I've seen were in Pittsburgh in that stadium. It's not Heinz Field anymore, but I just hate
No.
that stadium. I hate that stadium so much because of what happened there. So, I mean, you want to tell us something, go ahead. I'm saying don't go.
You know what? It's actually one of the best. It ranks third for us on Stadium Journey, one of the best experiences. I'll be honest with you. I don't like going to see my team anywhere, right? I'm more of like, I'd rather just go and experience it more as like a home fan. You're right. It's not Heinz Field anymore. It's Acrisure Stadium, which is weird. And they used to have this big Heinz ketchup bottles that would kind of sign that on the signs that would like pour ketchup out.
It's kind of like the weird thing because now we're in like the second generation of the naming rights. So it's like people are getting nostalgic for Heinz, like a ketchup.
No doubt. The location is awesome. It's, right across the parking lot from PNC Park where the Pirates play, which is my personal favorite baseball stadium and the favorite of many. It offers, it's probably, to me, it's the stadium that offers the best marriage of downtown, city life with tailgating. Because there is a huge parking lot in between, and the tailgating there is pretty solid. But you can walk to restaurants and walk across the bridge, no problem. Probably one of the more unique things that I've seen is people tailgating on their yachts or their boats or whatever, because the river is right there, and they'll just pull up, dock right beside the stadium and play their music, and they'll go, 3 deep, 4 deep or whatever, and they'll just like party on their boats when the game starts. Some of them will go in, and some of them will stay there. The Great Hall in Pittsburgh is pretty awesome, where if you're into history, I call it treasure hunters, go and see little artifacts and little, pieces of history from the team. The Great Hall there in Pittsburgh is pretty awesome. But if you're a Jets fan and it's traumatic for you, I totally get that. Could be worse. You could be a Browns fan, right? And walk into Pittsburgh.
As long as there's no Doug Bryan exhibit, I guess it's okay. The next week, Jets go to Foxborough to play the Patriots. That's speaking about like things you don't want to see if you're a Jets fan. I know they have a big complex down there, don't they? The Patriots, they have a Hall of Fame there, which I don't know if a Jets fan would want to go to, but I understand Foxborough, there's this whole thing by the stadium now.
Yeah, they've done a really good job of taking that almost rural stadium and building it into an attraction, which, from our standpoint makes a whole lot of sense, right? Like you've got eight dates, 10 dates, whatever. And what else are you going to do there? How else are you going to get people to come out to Foxborough? And, when Robert Kraft built it, he wanted Boston, but where was it going to go? That was a problem. The Patriot Place. Yeah. A lot of things there. I believe there's a cinema, tons of restaurants there. They do have a like a Hall of Fame museum kind of thing, a little pretentious, kind of like the 49ers. I have been to that. I haven't been to a game. The design itself, it's pretty mid-range. It's about partway through for us. Not, definitely you're going to miss that kind of downtown city experience. So that would definitely be one where if I'm going, I would really check out the website, because there's a lot of great hints on parking. They have from what I hear, they have an interesting parking situation where there's a special lot that you can go and park at for free. It's about, I think, a mile, somewhere between a mile and a mile and a half away, but it opens to let people go home late. So the idea is that, you could park here for free, but you can't rush out after, which, helps with the traffic, of course. And then encourages people to go and spend their dollars in Patriot Place, where the restaurants and whatnot are.
November 10th, Jets travel out to Arizona to play the Cardinals. Now, this is one I don't know anything about this stadium. I mean, I've seen it on TV. I know, I mean, all I know about the stadium is what I've seen on TV. I really don't know anything else about it. So what can you tell us about it?
I would say, I mean, for me, it's one of the top places that on my NFL bucket list. I would absolutely love to go to it. And the Arizona Stadium, State Farm Stadium, I think it's called now. Is that right? Yeah, State Farm Stadium. It sort of pushed the envelope. So, you had that a lot of stadiums built in the same area that kind of look the same. You had, Foxborough, you have Pittsburgh, you have, Tennessee, and then you had Arizona, which was like, okay, you guys did that thing. We're going to do this. And the first time you saw it, you went, whoa, that looks way different. They brought in the sliding field, right? Because they, although I'm kind of in the north, I'm not really interested in going and sitting outside in December. That doesn't appeal to me. I also wouldn't want to sit in Arizona in, September outside. So you got the dome feature. But they were the first one to do that sliding field so they could have the best of both worlds, right? You have your grass field still, but it's also indoors, is going to protect your patrons from the heat. It ranks kind of just above the middle for us. But yeah, it's one that I would want to totally do. Now it's in Glendale. So if you know anything about the Arizona Coyotes hockey team, you would know that Glendale was a disaster for them. But, it's a big difference getting people to drive out for 8 football games as opposed to, 30 hockey games. So, you're going to be outside of Phoenix. I'm not really sure what the Glendale area looks like, but the complaints about it is that it's pretty far from, your downtown Phoenix area.
And I think the other thing is, football, except unless you're playing on Thursday, it's a weekend. You're essentially dedicating a full day anyway. So I feel like, for me, I mean, that's just me speaking. I don't think it's as big of a deal as a Wednesday night where you have to go rush to a hockey game.
Yeah, I would think so.
All right, December 8th, Jets travel to Miami for a game against the Dolphins. As you mentioned, I mean, I say this every year just for the Jets because you see those teams go to Miami in September and like the guys are exhausted by the end of the game. But you're right, also as a spectator, you don't want to go to Miami in September. December, though, from New York, it's a pretty nice trip, it seems.
Yeah, Miami has there's a stadium that has gone through a lot of different iterations and a lot of upgrades, right? So probably about a decade ago, they made a really big deal about covering the stands. So now you're kind of sitting in the shade as a fan, as opposed to being out on the field. But yeah, those old Don Shula teams where the Dolphins would be in white and and the poor opponent would have to be in the dark colors. And yeah, that was great. It's outside of Miami per se. It's in Miami Gardens. So you're going to get a bit outside of, your where all your action is in downtown and whatnot. And Miami's kind of a strange place. It's like a lot of little things kind of put together that I feel a lot of other places would swallow up into one giant big city. It's, they're still in kind of different places like that. So for me, it's my favorite, but I'm a little biased. That's my team. I would say, if you've never, and maybe this would resonate with some of your fans who are Jets fans from afar. Probably the greatest experience I ever had was like my first Dolphins game. And it was because I was a fan for a long time and I identified with that team and I never went, right? I get it's different, if you're in the area and you go with your dad when you're little and that's kind of your family thing. But there's nothing like that build up so that you could appreciate the whole experience as an adult. It's just amazing. And if you're, and Miami's not the greatest stadium in the world. Like I said, I'm biased. It's probably it's in the bottom third of the Stadium Journey rankings. But my experience was just so unique to me. And yeah, it's the one. If you're a Jets fan and you haven't been to see the Jets ever in life, just go and relish that. Save up, as you should with all NFL experiences. Save up and just go and relish that experience for the first time. There's absolutely nothing like it.
And then just in Florida once again the next week they have a game in Jacksonville.
Yeah, there's another one that's on the chopping block. It's not going to be around for much longer. One of the nice things about Jacksonville is they have a covered. It's almost like it's not an arena. It's like a covered seating area where they run a whole lot of pregame stuff. If you're really into the pregame shows, go and sit there. That they have the pregame shows on the big screen there. There's live bands going. I would say it's my experience is I thought it was kind of underrated for a fan experience. If you're going just for the Jets and you're going to watch your team, that'll be one thing. Traditionally where Jacksonville hasn't been great and say week 15 they're eliminated, that's going to change the feeling of it. It's not going to be full. It's not going to be that great experience that you would get at some other places where the attendance is a little less elastic.
Do they still have like the pool you can go into?
Yeah, they have a pool there. It's it's pretty neat.
Do you need like a special ticket to get into the pool?
I think you do. You know what they also had there is they have a little dog park in the stadium. So like you go take your dog and there's a dog area and they have a little dog pool and whatnot. And that was probably that's one of the most unique things I've ever actually seen in the NFL. It was pretty wild.
The Jets then close up their road schedule week 17 at Buffalo. So, we talk about going to Miami in December. Now we're talking about going to Buffalo in December. What can you tell us about the stadium? I mean, that's good. Seems like a rough trip to go to Buffalo, and then that one. Buffalo is the one you want in September.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Bring your parka, bring your mitts, bring everything. It's going to be cold, and if I'm generally kind of cheap with the tickets, where when I go to somewhere I don't want to pay a ton, and I'm more than willing to sit up top. Buffalo would be the one where I would spend. I would rather be in the lower bowl because, again, not a downtown. It's in Orchard Park. And you know what's in Orchard Park? Nothing. The stadium. That's it. The tailgating at Buffalo is amongst the best. And I'm sure you've heard the Bills Mafia and those guys are crazy, jumping off of RVs and landing in tables and all that kind of stuff. They're definitely a unique group there. But yeah, being up in that top in the upper deck with the wind zipping through there, it is really, really cold. Again, another stadium that is not for long. It's, I'm not sure what exactly it's going to be like. But if there's a spot that I would say get there early, it would be Buffalo now, because you've also got the construction that's going to happen with the new stadium, and it's going to reduce some of the parking. Be prepared to wait a long time to get out, because the traffic is pretty awful getting out of there. I wouldn't, if I'm coming from like New York, I would be staying over, because it's going to be a seriously late night. And if you figure, you're going to be on the road at like 4:30, 5 o'clock, the only way that's going to happen is if it's an absolute blowout and people are bailing early. The best idea actually is to have like a double tailgate, like tailgate before. And then when you come out, fire up the grill after and, have a couple snacks and sit around and wait for that parking lot to clear. Cause it's probably the worst place that I've ever been to get in and out of. And in you want to be early. To get out of, you're going to be late.
Yeah, and I remember I was in Buffalo 10 years ago. It was August for a friend's wedding, and I remember the Bills were playing at home the night I arrived, and I saw the stadium was nowhere near the downtown, and it actually reminds me of a story, and especially timely stories since the Jets are playing there in December, and I remember their former general manager, Bill Polian, who worked with a number of teams. He worked with the Panthers. He worked with the Indianapolis Colts, but he was the Bills general manager. And I remember he told the story. The reason that stadium's located in that section of the area is it was the land was the cheapest anywhere in the Buffalo area. And the reason for that is that that's the area where it snows the most in the winter. So speaking about cold environments.
Yeah, and I mean, Buffalo is bad for having games bumped, right? It happened last year where they had to bump it a couple days, and if you're a gambling man, then you can go and hope for a whole lot of snow and bring your shovel and volunteer to shovel out the stands and in hopes of a free ticket. But I don't know if I would do that.
Before we go, I have to ask, where does MetLife Stadium rank on the ratings?
So MetLife, in our rankings, it ranks right in the middle. I haven't been myself. I have talked to a few people about MetLife, and one of probably the biggest comment was, how did you get so little for so much money? And that's like, it's fine. I mean, it's a stadium. As a bit of an outsider, I look at it and go, well, there's no architectural feature that's going to draw, right? Like, it's not like Minnesota, which is built like a ship. It's not Atlanta, which is built like a ninja star or something like that, or Los Angeles, which has this great big canopy or whatever. It's just, I look at it, it's like a college stadium with pro amenities, right? It's just blah. It's just this round sort of meh. And I guess all things considered, it sounds pretty easy to get to. Where if you were to actually have it in New York, who knows where that would be and how that would work. I have heard that the Jets experience is actually better than the Giants experience, and that the Jets do more in so far as a like game day production kind of thing, and that Jets fans are just a little bit more relaxed, and they bring kind of more to the table than Giant fans, which seem to be a little bit more uptight. But I'm kind of paraphrasing there. I can't say I've experienced either. So
I think everything that's like not actually about the stadium. I think the fans are great. I think, like you say, the Jets do a great production. I think everything about the stadium's terrible. Like, I hate the stadium itself, though. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head. I was actually a little surprised to hear it middle of the pack. I was expecting to hear it more to the bottom, but I think your rankings also count like atmosphere, and I do think like the fans make it a very good atmosphere.
Yeah, it's the metrics sometimes will go, well, wait a second, where did that come from? And then you start breaking it down, and the fact that that it is New York, if I was ranking like neighborhood per se, I'd immediately take off a point because it's not New York, but New York is next door. So if I'm going, I'm going to have access to all of that New York stuff, Times Square and all of that kind of fun stuff as well. Getting there seems to be pretty good. So, that's a bump up. That's a really solid piece. What you would do with concessions, you're not going to, some place that you might look at from the outside and go, wow, that place looks amazing, might have, pretty blah concessions, and that's going to change the rankings a bit. So yeah, it's, I honestly, I thought it was a little bit high. But also with our rankings, like, it's not just one guy who's writing the whole thing. We're kind of all over the place, and sometimes you get guys who like, that's their team and this is home, and they really dig that. And, sometimes you get someone who goes and it's a bad experience for what one reason or another, and they just, it just doesn't resonate with them. So, that's kind of the way it rolls.
All right. Well, Dave, thanks so much for joining me. And if you're interested in any, not just an NFL stadium, any stadium you're going to visit, head to Dave's site, stadiumjourney.com. It'll give you a lot of great information no matter where you want to go. That's all for our show today. Thanks so much to Dave for joining me. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Enjoy your Wednesday, everybody. We'll be back next time to talk more Jets.